Morning, everyone. I have a story to tell you today about how I had an experience where I believe that God put me at a specific place at a specific time for a specific reason. Before I start telling the story, though, I have two things that I just want to mention first. This video is, I would say, PG-13, and I don't think it's really appropriate for our younger grandkids to listen to. The second thing that I want to mention is that for those of you who aren't familiar with uh, the Katy area of Houston, Texas, I'm going to be mentioning some roads that you're not going to be familiar with. So when I do that, I'll try to give you the directional orientation of those roads so you'll have some idea of what I'm talking about. The story begins in the late 1990s. Jane and I had three teenagers who were going to high school in the Katy area, in the North Katy area school district, and they just built a brand new high school, which was like 20 minutes away from our house. So our kids didn't like to ride the bus, and so a lot of mornings I would I would take the kids and I would drive them to high school. And they went pretty early, so I could drive them there, drop them off, and then I could go from there to my work, which was maybe another 20 or 25 minutes away from there. So on that particular morning that I dropped them off, I headed south on a road called Mason Road, and that's a road that runs north and south. And I could take I could take Mason Road and from near the school all the way down to Interstate 10, which runs east and west, and that's where my work was, you know, just a few minutes from there. So that morning I was going south on Mason Road, and it was a pretty new section of road that had been built up toward that high school. And the road was a divided highway that had two lanes on each side with a grass median in between. So I was headed south, and as I was driving along, I crossed through the intersection at 529 and went a little bit further down, and there was a car approaching me on going north just to my left as I was going south. And as I approached that car, I looked over and I saw something that looked like a big bag of trash had been thrown out of that car onto the road. Well, I slowed down a little bit, and as I approached that bag of trash, I looked over and I said, "That's not a bag of trash, that's a human being." And I was like, "What the heck?" And there was a turnaround about 200 yards further down, and I reached that turnaround and headed back north on Mason Road, and I drove up right to where that girl was. Now the car that she actually jumped out of was about 200 or 250 yards north of us, where I was there with the girl who was laying in the middle of the road. And so I immediately got on my phone and I called 911 and said, "Hey, there's an accident. I need officers. I need an ambulance." And the 911 operator said they're on their, stay there. They're on their way. So I got out of the car and I went to go see what I could do for the girl. And when I walk up to her, I was surprised that she was alive. But I mean, she was screaming in agony, and also, I mean, she had obviously broken bones and blood all over her head and her face and her arms and everywhere. It was a mess. Well, I I looked up from her and I looked, and the guy from the car had parked the car, and he was walking back toward us. And I mean, she was alert enough that, she saw that, and she was saying, "He's going to kill me. He's going to kill me." He said he was going to kill me, and obviously, for somebody to jump out of the car at going 45 or 50 miles an hour, you got to be pretty convinced that that's a necessary option. So shouldn't be laughing about it, but it's crazy, just a crazy situation. Anyway, as the guy approaches, I kind of just instinctively I stepped in between him and the girl, and he was maybe 30 yards away from us, and I got in between, and he was yelling and screaming obscenities at me, and I just looked at him and I said, "Listen, the police and an ambulance are on their way, and if you think you're going to get to her, you're going to have to come through me first." Well, he turned around, he ran back to his car, and he got in his car and he took off. Crisis averted, but the girl's a mess. So I go back to her, and just about that time, a pickup truck pulled in behind me, and a guy got out of the pickup truck, and he's like, "Hey man, what can I do? How can I help?" And I said, "We're going to get run over out here in the middle of the road. Can you help me get her into the passenger side of my car?" So we had to kind of lift and carry her, screaming her lungs out the whole time, and get her into the passenger seat of my car. And I get her in there, and it took us 2 or 3 minutes at least to do that because it was so difficult. And so he said, "Can I do anything else?" I said, "No, that's okay." And he turned around and he left. Well, I went to the trunk of my car and I got out a roll of paper towels and a couple of beach towels that I'd kept in the back of the car in case I needed to change a tire or something. So I got those out and I took those up to the girl, and I'm trying to calm her down and trying to give her some paper towels or the beach towels to put on the places that I helped her put on the places where she was bleeding. And she's like, "He's going to kill me. He's going to kill me." And then she said, "He's going to go get his gun. Our apartment's right there at 529, and he's going to come back and he's going to shoot both of us." I'm like, what? And so not too much time had gone by, but the 911 people hadn't shown up. So I was like, what am I going to do? Well, I look up, and that car the guy was in is headed south on Mason Road, really speeding down Mason Road, headed toward us. So I shut the passenger door on the girl's side, and I run around and I get in the driver's side and got in the driver's seat. By then, the guy had turned around and he was right behind us, and I was like, "What if this guy starts shooting?" And so I took off as fast as I could go. I'm headed north on Mason Road. When I get to 529, I run the red light. I make a right-hand turn into traffic. The guy's right on my tail the whole time. I'm driving down 529 going east, and as I do that, I'm thinking, I got to get to a police officer somehow. And so I thought about it, and I thought the only place I think I can go to would be the substation at Highway 6 and Clay Road, and that's probably driving this fast. I could probably do that even in traffic in less than 10 minutes, probably 5 minutes. So I'm thinking that's our best hope, and I knew there would be a lot of traffic on Highway 6, so I went ahead and I made a right-hand turn on Barker Cypress and headed south on Barker Cypress, trying to get to Clay Road, which is right where we lived, to get near to the police substation. So as I make the turn onto Barker Cypress, the guy's right behind me, and it just dawned on me out of nowhere that oftentimes when I would bring our kids to high school, there was a gas station at West Little York on the other side of the road that had a donut shop and kolache shop in it. And I'd stop there pretty often and get a cup of coffee and let the kids get donuts to eat on their way to school. And usually when I stopped there would be maybe one or two sheriffs department guys in there, and I thought maybe there'll be a sheriff's deputy there. And I wasn't very far away, just probably less than a minute or two. And so I'm speeding down, going south on Barker Cypress. The guy's right on my tail. I'm approaching the gas station, and I look over there, and there's 3 police cars sitting there. And as I approach that, traffic going both ways, I made a hard left-hand turn, cut across traffic, flying into the gas station. And I mean, the guy was right behind me. He got into the gas station right behind me. I jumped out of my car and ran into the gas station and just yelled out, "There's a guy trying to shoot me. There's a guy trying to kill me." Well, those police officers all jumped up, and I mean, they immediately ran outside. Well, when the guy was driving the car saw them, I mean, he burned out and quickly got back on Barker Cypress and headed south. Fortunately, one of those officers was a Texas State Trooper, and he jumped in his car, and I mean, he was right on that guy's tail. He was immediately out there after him. And then the 2 other guys who were sheriff's deputies, they went to where the girl was, and they called in an ambulance and additional deputies. So I was sitting inside, and I was watching this all take place, sitting there in my bloody clothes with my bloody hands. And so they're taking care of her, and boy, within, I think it was less than 3 minutes, ambulance was there, a couple other sheriff's deputies were there, and they were able to get the girl on a gurney stretcher thing and get her strapped down and get her into that ambulance, and it was off. So after that, all the police officers left, all the sheriff's deputies left except one sheriff's deputy, and he came in and he said, "I need to get a statement from you." So we sat down, and I gave him the statement, and he wrote it all down. So he said, "Mr. Tennant, thank you very much. If we need anything further, we'll get back to you." And I looked at him and I said, "Hey, do I need to testify or anything about this?" And he kind of looked at me funny, and he said, "Mr. Tennant, we have 2 or 3 of these happen a day out here in this area." He said this was a bad one, but he said we have 2 or 3 abuse cases out here happen every day. And I said, "That's terrible." And he said, "Well, 99.9% of the time, the woman never files charges against the guy who's abusing her." I thought, that's awful. I mean, and the sheriff's deputy looked at me and he said, "Do you want to file charges?" I'm looking at him and he goes, "Are you sure?" When we said that, the light went on in my head, and I was like, I've got a wife and kids at home, and I don't need that. I don't need to worry about that. He said, he just shook his head and walked out. Well, I got in my car and I drove from there, and I drove to my office. I walked in my office, and the receptionist saw me, and she's like, "What happened to you? You've got blood all over you." And I went in my office and I put my briefcase down, and by then my secretary came running in, and other people in the office came running in. We got a bunch of people in the office. I told them the story, and then I was able to, get cleaned up and got my car detailed. Never heard about the whole episode again. Nothing. Didn't hear about it anymore. Oftentimes I think about this story, and I do pray for that girl, and I do pray that she's safe. The only explanation for this that I can think of, and it's what I said at the beginning of this video, for some reason, God put me at a specific place at a specific time for a specific reason. I don't know. I believe in heaven. I'll find out. But I'm glad he did. Thank you for listening to this video. Love you guys. Bye.